Welcome to Finance at the Jobsite, the podcast where construction finance meets the field. I'm your host, Rishi Srivastava, founder of Being Human. In each episode, I sit down with construction CFOs, controllers, owners, project managers, IT leaders, ERP consultants, and industry experts to uncover how they connect the back office with the field, choose and implement technology, manage cash flow, and drive profitable projects. Whether you are running the numbers, leading the team, or designing the systems that keep projects moving, this is your place to learn what's working, what's broken, and what's next in construction finance. Today, our guest is Teimon Phillips. Teimon, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rishi.
First section is on your career plus field to office reality. You started in construction management in 2014. What did that first historic Reno Black History Museum project teach you that still guides you today?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so that was the Black History Museum and Cultural Center in Richmond, Virginia. My first project, I didn't know what the environment was like of construction, especially from the project management standpoint. So I would say one thing that I learned that still sticks with me today is the amount of time that you have to react to any type of discovery. You know, it's something that you want to jump on immediately, whether it's in renovation or it's in ground up construction. You want to, once you discover you have some sort of conflict, you want to try to jump on that immediately instead of, writing it down to a list. I mean, of course you can do that, but when you write it down to a list, you need to act on it instead of just, writing it down and thinking you're going to get to it later.
Yeah. Yeah. Like some of these tasks, they need to be acted upon immediately.
Sure. And it's always not just because it's time sensitive. It might be just because you'll write it down and then you'll just forget about it. And before you know it, a week will go by. Things happen. Everyone does it. And so it's best to get the ball rolling on it as soon as you know.
Yeah. Actually, there is an author who says that if you can do something in 5 minutes, there is
Yep.
no reason to postpone it.
I've
Just
heard
do it
that.
now.
I've heard that before too. Yes. One of my good friends, Casey Fablin, told me that a few years ago. If it takes less than 5 minutes, just do it. Don't try to sit and wait around to do it.
Yeah. Renovations to residential renos to ground up production. What changed most in your day-to-day decision making as you moved through those phases?
All right, so just spacing them off into three, from renovations on the commercial side to residential. Of course, I have more direct interaction with the owner, the person who's purchasing the service. And commercial, we were working with an owner. We would see them maybe once a month, and we would prepare the meeting and things like that. Residential, our standard was to talk to them every day. So whether I saw them or not, I had to have that daily communication with the homeowner, just letting them know how the service was going. And into ground up construction, it's going to be totally different. It's not about the communication, but I would say the amount of time that I had to actually, work through my day and plan pockets of whatever type of work I wanted to do. I had a lot more flexibility to do that in ground up than I did with renovations.
Yeah, makes sense. The homeowner is so nervous about their project.
But yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially when it's a renovation, they're still living there for the most part, depending on what type of renovation it is. If you're doing a kitchen, they're still living in their living room and their bedrooms. So it can be a pretty stressful situation for everyone involved.
Where do you see the biggest quote unquote information gap between the job site and the office in production home building?
That's an excellent question. At least I would say from my experience right now, it would be the specifications from design getting to the trade partners. Because in production build, sometimes, well, one of the good things about it is you can get into a rhythm. You build the same type of house, you build them, you churn them out. But that can also be a bad thing because not all houses are 100% the same. There's small changes between this house and that house, depending on what a homeowner selected for it. So sometimes getting those intricate details to the trade partner to execute them correctly the first time, that's, I would say, just one pain point that I can see right now.
The specifications on a piece of paper, it's hard to communicate them downstream.
Sure. And if a guy's like, oh, I built this house 300 times before, which they have, but there's always, each homeowner gets to pick something a little different. So it's not always the same. So it's easy for them to kind of miss things.
If you could force the office to understand one PM pain point for a week, what would it be?
Well, all right. There's maybe two ways I can go on this. I guess I will say, even though we have a design and we have drawings, it doesn't always execute that way in the field. And it can be for a multitude of reasons. It could be for when you're doing groundworks and pulling measurements, there's no walls that you're truly working off of. So the guys, they can get pretty close with the numbers. It could be where the framer is putting the stud. It doesn't, there's always that human error that we have to account for, that they can't truly see that from their office. You would have to be in the field to understand that. So, I guess I would say it doesn't always look exactly like how we designed it.
Yeah. In the real world, the constraints are difficult to manage.
100%. You're right.
The next section here is on tech forward PM plus systems thinking. You've been the software guy in multiple roles. What's the biggest mistake companies make when implementing construction tech?
I would say the big one, because, when we'll just use construction management software as an example, they get a brand new shiny software. It's great. They're all excited about it. And they try to use every single feature that the software has to offer. That sounds like you're, utilizing the amount of money that you spent for it. But in actuality, you should be trying to implement the points of the software that truly are in alignment with your workflow than trying to change your entire workflow to work for the software that you get in. I would say that's number one by far.
Yeah. Most companies just need to focus on a few features in the software.
Exactly. Use what you need, and then if you want to implement something later, you can do it. But trying to do it all at once that can be a big failure.
Yeah. At Fabling Belt, you moved into systems manager. What triggered that shift and how did you earn buy-in from production plus office teams?
Thank you. So what it was is the company, like, they hit a point where they really began to grow, and they were growing fast, and there became the need to have this different types of software. For example, we needed to be able to ensure that everyone had a cellular device that was working, so we can always contact them. GPS monitoring for a fleet, because we had a fleet, but when there was more people, we got more vehicles, and we just needed a way to have those type of insurances for ourselves. And I would say buy-in, it was kind of easy. I had been around the company for a while, and everyone kind of knew that I was the guy that was good with tech. I would help everyone out with their emails and logging into things all the time. So it didn't take much buy-in, because, I had been kind of doing it at a small scale prior to the position switch. So it was pretty easy.
Yeah. We run a construction accounts payable automation company,
Mm-hmm.
and it's always like the most technically sophisticated people, we want them our champions.
Yeah.
Someone like you.
Thank you.
You built SOPs across departments, production, sales, admin, marketing, HR. What's one SOP you created that immediately reduced chaos?
This is going to be, it's very simple, but I think you're going to get it. So when I was with the renovation company, everyone had to clock in for specific jobs that you were going to go to. So if you were going to go over here to work on a deck, you had to clock into that job. And you had to also use the accounting code for what type of work you were going to be doing. There was a different, I would say, a range of different age ranges of people who worked in the field. The young guys could kind of do it. The older guys, they just couldn't even figure out how to open their phones. So I developed the not only the training video, but the structured diagram, just showing them what the process is for clocking in, from the time you get to a job site, what to do when you're leaving from that job site to the next one. And I made it super simple. It was, short and to the point, super simple. And that allowed for accurate accounting for each job from that point forward. It wasn't always perfect. There was still little things here and there, but from that point forward, it changed the accounting for those renovation jobs.
So this newer technology, you and I take as for granted that we can understand them. But for older generation, it's tough.
It's tough. That's true, man. They didn't grow up the same way we did. I was born in the 90s. So growing up, You know, it was kind of where we had just got they were introducing kids to it young. So I got a little bit of where I didn't use computers, but then I saw when they came. So I got kind of the best of both worlds, I would say.
I'm in 80s, so I also had a little bit of
But yeah, I
head
would
start.
say maybe a little better because you know, you were more developed than I was when they started to come around. So you got a chance to truly understand what they were from the beginning.
Yeah. Thank you. What does good data in the field actually require? Habits, incentives, training, leadership, or software design?
Good data, I'm going to put it to two things. I would say you need to be able to have, so the training, of course, to use whatever software that, or whatever way you're going to be communicating that data. You have to know how to do it efficiently. You have to know what the other person on the other end needs so you can get the best information possible. So I would say that, and then also just the discipline to set that time apart to be sure that you take the time to do those things like updating the schedule or updating the daily log, whatever data it is that you're capturing, you need to make sure that you set that time every day, no matter what. So the office can get the information.
It takes a lot of time to get the data from the field.
It does. It does. And you do it in a multitude of different ways, whether it's taking photos, it's writing a log, it's talking with trades, just knowing what's happening now, what's going to happen later. There's a lot of ways. And you're right. It's very time consuming.
The next section here is on POs, variance, and how money moves. Walk me through your current workflow. When you check off framing, how does that trigger payment, and where can that process break down?
Excellent question. And it's always good when a construction company actually uses these features. So when I'm checking off of the framing task on a schedule, assigned to that task is the PO that is the PO for frame. So when I click that, the accounting office sees that, hey, this task has been completed. I can now send payment for this task to the trade. You know, the trade partner is assigned to it. We can all see, you know, where it needs to go. And it's that simple. But the ways that it could break down is not many, but obviously not checking off on a task and it's 2 weeks later and we're done with framing, but no one checked it off. That's how someone cannot get paid. Also, we have to ensure that the PO is actually attached to the framing task, you know, within the schedule. Because if it's not there and I click off on it, everybody can see that the task is done. But if there's no PO, the accounting person's not going to pay anyone because they don't have any PO to reference, or it could be the wrong PO. It could be on the framing task if the estimator doesn't load the framing PO and they put a siding PO, that's where a breakdown can happen. The wrong trade gets paid for the wrong work, and you know it can be a trouble to work out.
Right. What software do you use to manage this work?
We use Newstar currently where I am.
Yeah, okay. Newstar is like a project management tool?
It's all encompassing. So yeah, so you can get the project management features where you're building a schedule, using schedule templates. But there's also accounting features where for POs that the accounting department uses. It's a database as well where you could store, you know, plans, etc.
Variance POs are where PMs feel real control. What are the most common reasons you create variance POs, and how do you prevent them?
I would say for me, variance POs come around the time where you're doing the punch list. So when I'm pretty much complete on a home, I create a list for, you know, each trade to say, hey, I know you've already finished your work, but I've noticed that you need to tighten this up here, you know. So we send that list out. Guys come back through a completed house. You know, some are better than other at taking care of what they do, but you know, there's always going to be some guys who may damage something else while they're working on their punch list. For instance, the electrician might go change a bulb in the shower, but they're wearing muddy shoes and they're standing on the shower and they scratch it, something like that. You know, I would then have to write a variance PO. In that instance, I know where to charge it back to because I'm using the electrician. But when there's multiple trades coming back in, it's not always easy to determine, you know, I got to pay for this, what I need to cover it. So we're writing the variance PO there.
So you're basically moving money from one trade to another in a variance PO?
Yes, well, not necessarily. A variance is just I'm paying outside of my baseline budget. But if I know why I have to do it, like if I'm paying for something that the electrician damaged, I could then bill the electrician for the damage to the tub in which I have to pay the plumber.
Okay, makes in production building, what's the earliest leading indicator that a job is going to drift? Schedule, budget, trades, or customer changes?
That's a tough one. At least so from right now for budget, at least and where I am, budget doesn't usually drift that much. But the main thing that can do it is the number one expense. And you may know this. The number one expense in when you're doing production building, it's always going to be the dirt, moving the dirt, because you can never, well, you can't account for what you need, but if you ever need more than what you accounted for, well, of course, that's with everything, but that's the biggest thing that can bust a budget is grading, moving dirt from this lot. And if you don't account for that properly up front, you'll know that probably by the time where you're about to dig for the footing, because you'll have to you have to set the finished floor elevation and then account according to where that would need to be. You gotta, at that point, try to envision the grade to see what you need. And you'll know from that point if you blew the budget on grading or not. And I would say from the scheduling standpoint, we run a pretty tight schedule. The only thing that can truly throw our schedule, because we have such a good relationship with our trades, they typically, it's never been an instance where a trade is throwing me off. But the utility connection companies, so in Virginia, we have Dominion Power. In my community, I'm using Columbia Gas. And the connection that I'm talking about is there's already the backbone it's already set in the ground, but for each home, we have to run the secondary connection is where Dominion Power is going to make their connection from their main line to the house. I can't truly tell them when to come. The best I can do is pass my electrical inspections and then they schedule it from that point. So if they have any issues to where they just decide they're not coming or their schedule's too full, that can just blow my schedule out.
Yeah. You're building a really complicated entity, and there's so much dependence on so many things here.
That's true. There's a lot. And that's why one of the most powerful tools a project manager can have is influence. It's not how good you're going to click off on a schedule if you're a guy that's always going to do it, but being able to establish relationships with the trade partners, the utility companies, inspectors, anyone that has anything to do with the work, establishing great relationships and being able to influence them to do what you need to do. It's a give and take. It's not just me trying to make them do what I need, but trying to figure out what we all need and how we can work together.
Yeah, that makes sense. The next section's on daily logs plus real productivity. You said the most efficient daily log isn't end of day. It's a 9:30 a.m. walk plus later verification. Why does that work better in the real world?
So, and to me, I think it's better to, so guys are getting in 6:30, 7 a.m., they take 15, 30 minutes to set up whatever they might take. They get to work 7:30 or 8. You give them a chance to get into what they're working on. And then you walk around just to see what everyone's doing, if they're running through any trouble. And I always just I'm not taking a full log at that point. I'm just making a little note. These guys are actually here and this is what they're actually working on. Just a small note. And when you go back to actually to do the log, you've had a chance to not only confirm everyone that's on site, you've also, got to see exactly what it is that they're working on, and you understand the intricate details of what they're actually doing. So when you're making the notes, it's just kind of like what's the word I can use for it? It just sparks my memory more when I'm actually doing the log later, because I'm going back to that note and I might say the electricians, they were wiring the panel. Oh, okay. Yeah, they were wiring the panel. And then, I know they're going to, put all their boxes up, XYZ. It's just when you have that other touch point to go off of, instead of trying to do it all at the end of the day, I find you can remember more and you could capture more pertinent information.
Also, when you see people working, you get so much about the context.
Yes. Yes, that's two. And that's another thing is a project manager is not technically an expert on everything that's going on. So it's always good to get in the field and literally ask questions like, hey, I've seen these boxes go up 1,000 times, but what are you actually doing? And that's where you get the key knowledge that'll, put you above, other PMs who aren't doing it.
Yeah. The last mile is always vacant.
But yeah.
What's your minimum viable daily log that actually helps the office, protects you, and doesn't eat 2 hours?
Bare minimum is who's there. Number one, you count for all the trades that are there because that's part of it. Just a brief summary of what they did. So if I know, use electricians again, if electricians are running wires to the receptacles, something as simple as they ran wires for the receptacles today, that's viable, but also a photo. Photos are, no matter what, if you don't have anything, which isn't good, you always want to at least capture a photo of what's happening, which can, that'll help you string together a photo over time of what was actually going on. So brief summary of what they did, who's there, and a photo should do.
How long that takes?
If I'm in rough end phases, you could probably do that in about 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. Maybe 5 or 6 trades on site, 15.
And not all the trades have to be on the site at the same time, right?
That's right. It depends on which phase you're in, right? And if one trade causes a logistical conflict with others, then you can't have them around,
Yeah. So when you're building a home, what are the first few trades who come in and start working on that home?
First, well, I have the graders come out to install the silt fence and the temporary driveway. So silt fence is just like a little 3-foot fabric that goes around my entire construction, around my construction area, that's going to keep the sediment from escaping the construction site and getting into the water system. So there first. Actual real work on the house is going to be the concrete sub, because they're going to come to dig and pour the footing for the home.
The last section is on voice to text plus the future of the job site.
Mm-hmm.
You use voice to text for text/emails, but not for POs. What would have to be true for you to trust voice for daily logs, issues, or cost-related entries?
I mean, honestly, I'm all in on that. I would love to do it, but the functionality of how we put in POs, there's too many fields to click down through. So trying to use voice for that, it would be a little inefficient. Maybe if I was doing it on my computer, most of the times I do it on my phone because I'm just in the field doing it. But if there was just maybe one field that I could just type in or click in and then speak it out, that'd be great. I love to do that because I use voice to text literally all the time. I send text messages, emails, just pretty much anything where I could just sit, speak, and be done with it. I'll use it for that.
So let's say there is a form, you're checking all these boxes on them, 20 check boxes. You can speak that to this technology easily and they...
Oh, no, I'm not if I'm checking boxes, but yeah, if I have to click through maybe more than 4 fields, I'll just do it and I'll just type everything out instead of using the voice. But if I can just click into one field and just, speak everything that I need, that's what I'll use. I'll use that any day of the week. I love it.
Okay. So free form text you're writing about, right? Like in the daily logs, you're saying.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
The last question is, if you could design the perfect PM tool for a production builder using your systems background, what are the 3 must-have workflows it nails?
All right. So just for starters, simple, when I'm talking like 1 or 2 clicks, simple way to update a schedule in an app. I don't need anyone to have to go to an online base, login online platform to update. If you're doing that, to me, it's already no good to try to use in the field. It has to be an app. So, a simple way to update the schedule, and I'm going to kind of bunch these 2 together because they're both communication. A simple way for daily log, but also instant messaging. If we had an instant messenger that everyone in the company was all bought into, where I could just simply type something out to the estimator when I have a question in the field about, we should have this post on the PO. Why isn't it on the PO? An instant messenger would be phenomenal, which I think that's something that a lot of construction softwares do have it, but I don't know how many people use it. But if we combine to that, that'll be next level. And of course, just, easy to use, easy to access database. I don't want to have to go into S Drive or SharePoint where I got to click through 1,000 folders to find some drawings. Just something that's, simple. I think those are the three that'll make a PM super efficient in the field.
I think some of the newer AI tools are solving for those problems.
Really, I need to do a little more research. I haven't researched in software in a while. As you know, I used to be the guy to go out and learn about these new software to see what was good for our company. And I'll be interested to see what's out there now.
There's a lot out there. Now, on the accounting side, as well as the PM side, a lot of things are changing. But you guys are busy too, right? I mean,
Yeah, sure.
you cannot go and check everything out.
Yeah.
Teimon, thank you so much for your time. I enjoyed this conversation.
Absolutely, Rishi. I enjoyed it myself. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks for listening to Finance at the Job Site. If you found today's conversation valuable, share it with a teammate and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. You can listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or watch on YouTube. Just search Finance at the Job Site. Until next time, here is to building smarter, faster, and more profitable projects.